Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team, and this week a special guest. First off, we have from the team Ramon.
Hey guys, what's going on with you guys? Hope you guys are having a good day.
And our special guest for the week is Celeste, writer of some NPC Guides for Lancer. Say hello.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited to kind of pick your brain about your your experience with Lancer, and just because I'm going through these guides and it's getting me to be more interested in running Lancer, so I'm really excited to hear more of your thoughts on them in general. But this podcast here is a podcast about running and playing in tabletop RPGs. We kind of take like a casual approach to the functions of tabletop RPG gaming to make it a little bit easier for people to hop on the other side of the GM or DM or narrator screen, whatever it may be called for your particular game, just to make it a bit less mysterious looking for people who might be confused by that, or who might be nervous about trying it out. So just to start off the show, I just want to get into it I just want to get into everything, but we have to start off with the most important section of the show. So unless either of you have anything else you want to say as an introduction, I think we can hop right into our Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week.
Right. The Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week, brought to you by actually our guest today. I'm going to pick on Celeste because I've dispensed so much knowledge for all these, what is this, episode 58?
Yeah, we're getting up there.
Yeah, and as I say every week, I'm ill-prepared, but that's okay. Every good DM can, flim-flam, off the cuff, so... but today, I'm going to pick on our guest and ask Celeste to give us a tip of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my tip of the week would be that as a GM, when your players are deciding what they would like to do, either with a skill check or something like that you have them declare both what they are doing, like the action that they are taking, but also declare what the intent of that action is. Because sometimes what they're doing might be a little esoteric or maybe disconnected from their desired goal from that action, which might make what they're doing harder. But it also informs you as a GM how to respond to that, like what a great success on their side of things looks like, because they might try to do something and you as the GM are like, oh, okay, well, this is the outcome, and they're like, oh, well, that's not what I wanted at all, and it's like, I rolled a 25, like why is this happening? And it's like, oh, well, then you have a better solution for them, a better goal that they're trying to reach.
Yeah, definitely. It's very easy to sort of lose that bit of communication because you can't see into the player's head when they ask to roll a certain thing. They may have a piece of information or a certain target they're trying to get to, and it's easier to manage that. And certainly, most games have sort of a pass-fail sort of thing, but you can also describe different degrees of success or degrees of failure when you have the outcome in mind. You know how close or how far they are from it. It makes that communication of those results, whatever they're trying to aim for, makes it a little easier.
For sure. And in that even in games with a pass-fail system, even though ultimately a character is going to fail, you can describe you can give a little bit more detail, but maybe not just 100%, right? You never really you may be able to not fully jump the chasm or whatever, but you can get really close or whatever they're trying to do, right? I think that's really cool. Thanks, Celeste, for that Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week.
Ramon has a lot of energy this week. I was also just thinking, I've seen a lot of not a lot in general, but just recently I saw some discussion on whether you should let people roll for something if there's no way their character can possibly do it. And I think if you have their goal in mind, then you certainly can, because you can at least communicate, hey, you've got some of what you wanted. You might not have gotten all of it, even though you rolled the highest possible number on your die, but it's just that this target was out of your reach. But you as the person running the game, you can still give them something if you know what they're aiming for, more so than what they're doing.
Yeah, right. Failing forward could be on the die to die roll, right? Not just narrative or big swaps of plot. So I think that yeah, totally. Totally agree. I thought that's actually a really good tip. So
it is a very good tip.
Yeah, I'm into it. It's super, super useful.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add on to that, Celeste, or should we get into discussing the main topic?
Oh yeah, I guess the only other thing that I'd add is like what you were saying. I think Ramon, I think you mentioned like failing forward, how that can be kind of a part of it, and like partial goals, partial success is something I really like as a GM, because like if you ever hit a point where it's like the player's like, okay, well, I'd like to pick the lock on this door or whatever in D&D, and like that door is the only way forward, and they fail the roll, well then suddenly they don't have like an approach, and like something you can do with that is like, oh, well, you mess up the lock in the door and like alert everybody in the room, you know, something like that. Like the door is now open, but you have another larger problem in front of you.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, so, you know, now the enemies have the jump on the players.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool, yeah.
Okay, well, starting off with an excellent tip, let's get into an excellent episode. So Celeste, you've written a few, I think 3 at this point. If I'm looking at the drive right now, and I see ones for the Bombard, the Hornet, and the Spectre. You've written different guides to NPCs and different sort of like configurations of those NPCs, different templates you can apply, different synergies with other NPC types, and this is all for the Lancer Mech RPG, which itself has a lot of customization it has a lot of customization options for both players and GMs. So I just really like appreciated the concept of something that sort of drops some suggestions of how something might work before you throw it at players, just to sort of, you know, plan out those strategies and things like that. So I wanted to introduce you first and then get into the guides themselves. So what can you tell our listeners sort of about yourself and your history with tabletop RPGs, like anything you've played, anything you've ran, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been playing tabletop for just over 10 years now. I started back in 2010 or 2011. I don't know, back with 4th edition D&D, which is one of the reasons that I grew to really love 4th edition, which is one of the reasons that I loved Lancer so much, because you can see a lot of the bones of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons that have been kind of fine-honed to make Lancer. It has more, inspirations, obviously, but that's a big part of the game, the core of it that you can see. I've played other editions of D&D, and I've played a bunch of the first thing that got me out of D&D was Monster Hearts, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. Then I went back and I played a little bit of Apocalypse World, Blades in the Dark, which is another Powered by the Apocalypse game, but it functions a little bit differently. Burning Wheel, I'm a huge fan of. I really love Burning Wheel and the narrative style that it takes. I've played a little bit of Mutants and Masterminds, which I wanted to mention because I know that that's a favorite on this channel that you guys play that.
Yeah, definitely a favorite of mine.
Yeah. And oh goodness, any more are fleeing my brain currently. But, I mean, of course, obviously, Lancer. But, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the broad strokes of the kind of tabletop games that I've played and have experience with.
Okay, and it's mostly been as a player, have you done a whole lot of running games as well, or just mostly you focus on playing them?
In more recent years, in about the past 6 years, I've transitioned to doing a lot more GMing. A good friend of mine, though, his games, he rarely lets other people GM because that's the thing that he loves the most about games, and I really enjoy both sides of the table, so I've largely let him GM for that group of people. But in another group, I ran a 5th edition D&D game that lasts for a couple years, start to finish. Another one following that was, oh goodness, it went about 2 years and sadly trailed off as, the pandemic started. So that one was lost to time, but I'm planning to do something with them as soon as we could start hanging out again. and I've run a little bit of solo Lancer with somebody. That's been a lot of fun. Just me and her. And it's very interesting how we made that work. I can talk about that more later. But I have done a lot of GMing. Most of it, though, has been for 5th edition D&D. I actually very recently ran a game. It lasted for about 6 months or so, and it was just a full start to finish. And it was with the there's a play guide. It's called Unbreakable, I think, and it was a ton of fun. Unbreakable. It took a lot of it's like adventures that are made by a bunch of different designers and put into a single place, and I just pick and choose some of those that were appropriate levels for like just a level 1 through 7 adventure, with a nice little start and finish for when everybody couldn't come to the game. It was for just like 3 people, so when the people with conflicting schedules couldn't show up, my friend the GM let me finally run a game for him. And that was it.
Nice. Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm excited for you that you finished the campaign. I always know that that is actually the unlikely thing to happen, especially a very really long campaign. It's life tends to get in the way of everyone's fun with these games. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, cool.
I do want to ask real quick. I'm just super curious about your experience with Mutants and Masterminds, because I know we're going to talk about Lancer a whole ton this episode, and I want to get to that. But I don't know. Just curious, like what did you play?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally forgot. I ran Mutants and Masterminds. It was like 3 sessions. It was I was a camp counselor, and some of the other camp counselors and I had Mutants and Masterminds that I had just played. I had played Chief Tundra, who was a firefighter and boxer turned ice-powered superhero.
Nice.
He was a lot of fun to play as. But the game I ran for just like my camp counselor friends, we just did goofy stuff. Like they all made specific characters, and like I just had there were like 3 sessions we played, and there were only like 2 encounters during those sessions. And for one of them, it was just like basically a one-shot. So I took every single one of the players' names, and I made like a supervillain based on their name. So like one of them was named Bernstein, and so I made a fire-themed superhero. There was Cyrus, so there was a psionic superhero, and the other one had the name Mort, so an undead summoner, and just like pit their little superheroes against their real life supervillain alternatives.
Awesome. Oh, I love that.
Totally cool.
So yeah, you were playing with the other people at the camp, right? So like, was it like younger people that you were playing with, or?
We were the same age. I was hoping to like actually run some kind of D&D game for like the kids at that camp, but I never ended up getting the opportunity. It was just with a couple of the other counselors, like after yeah.
Okay, I see.
After hours. It was one of those like sleepaway camps, so we would hang out in the like adult rec center basically when everyone was asleep and play a little bit of Mutants and Masterminds.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds awesome. I mean, I don't know. I love the superhero tabletop RPG games. I've been really trying to get into Masks for a while now. I just need to find a group for that.
Oh, I played Masks. It is so much fun. I did a whole season of Masks. I was a player in a game. It was awesome.
I'm so jealous. I don't know what I gotta do. If I gotta find like a Reddit or a Discord or something.
It's always the problem when you have a game that you're like, man, I wish someone would run a game for me because I wanna be a player in it so bad, right? So it's just like
yeah, I want to play it first. I don't want to run it first.
I don't want to run it first. It's always the issue when you find out something's cool. You're like, oh man, I wish somebody else was cool into it and they could make play a game for me.
I don't know. Maybe one day I'll finally get to do that. But okay, is there anything else you want to describe about yourself real quick, or should we start talking about these guides?
We can dive right into the guides. I think that's my play history. I'm sure that you'll mention some other game at some point, and I'll be like, oh, I've played that for like 30 minutes at a birthday party or something. But for now.
Okay. All right. So yeah, if that comes up, then you can interrupt us and add your stories in. But yeah, so these NPC guides for Lancer. So essentially, like, they cover our I don't know if you want to describe them, but they essentially cover different types of NPCs that come with the Lancer book, which have very modular NPC builds that you can take. You can upgrade them per level to be appropriate for whatever encounters you're making for your players. You can add different templates and such onto them. And of course, as we've discussed on here before multiple times, there's different kinds of encounters that are easier to, like, that come with the Lancer book that you can throw at your players. So the different enemies you throw at them in these different encounters will have different effects. Obviously, if something is in there that's like constantly slowing them down, it's going to be more of an issue if they're in an encounter where they have to get from one side of the map to the other and something like that. So I was sort of wondering, like, what I guess your intent was with these NPC guides. Like, what were you trying to communicate to Lancer GMs with them, and what are you hoping that people get out of them?
Well, so just the same way that you would get on to, like, if you scroll through the, like, Reddit and you were like, if you just type in character builds into Lancer, there are a ton, because it's a very modular system, exactly what you said. And I wanted to kind of approach that from the NPC side for GMs and stuff. When I started playing, I found one of the things that I forgot about the most would be whatever the optional features for the various NPC classes that I was using. It's difficult to keep track of everything, Each player has, they'll have anywhere from like 3 to 6 or so, like, unique systems, all their weapon mounts to keep track of, and their, like, unique traits, but that's still just for a single mech. And you as the GM will have, at any point, anywhere from 4 to 8 or so NPCs that you are piloting that have just a huge variety of systems, weapons, that kind of thing. And what I started doing that really helped me when I was GMing and preparing was trying to think about each of these classes not necessarily just as the archetype that they represent, such as, striker, support, controller, that kind of thing, but what the, like, main kind of goal would be, like what would you call it?
Like, I don't know. It's like what their gimmick is, right? Like, how do you maximize what they're really good at?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Maybe.
Yeah, they're niche.
Yeah, I used to work in it because it's niche. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll all do something uniquely very well, and then they will, of course, have some kind of weakness that the players can exploit, and something that they're very good at denying the players an ability to do. And the fact that they're broken into archetypes, I think, is very helpful, because when you're DMing, you don't want to be like, all right, here are 6 strikers, have some fun, because the players will deal with them very quickly, but the players will also probably take more structure damage than they might against an ordinary group. So it's not necessarily like a difficult encounter as far as how they need to think about it and approach it, but it is, I don't know, kind of intense, maybe more intense than you mean it to be, and certain character types might suddenly, like, just absolutely clown on that. Like, one of the first times I used elites in a game of Lancer that I was running, the encounter was just a joke. Like, it got clowned on by the PCs, and that's very easy to happen if you aren't keeping track of all the unique things that each of the NPC classes can do.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm the only GM for Lancer for the channel, and I totally agree with you. Sometimes you just like have a bunch of options that you just like you literally can't remember them all, and to use them effectively, right? So that's why I was super excited to read this guide, your guides. Like I think that the way it's laid out, because up top you got like, you know, what are the goods and bads of it, you know, and it's like, you know, how do they actually, like, what are the steps of, like, you know, what a turn looks like for one of the NPCs, right? How does it interact with other allies? And you like it's super thorough. Like anybody who's slightly interested in Lancer, who's listening to this right now, you should definitely go check out Celeste's guides. I think I don't know, man. I'm totally intrigued to get all of them. I want you to do one for every single class, because I just want to know your ideas, your thoughts about it, because that's what big thing about Lancer to me was like, as a GM, it was like, what kind of cool combinations can I pull off to really like you know, put these PCs in a bind, right? How do I maximize, you know, I think you had to hit on your Hornet, I'm not sure if it was, I don't remember what for the other ones, but you have sweet succulent synergy, and it's like, that's literally what I want.
yeah, and that's really the goal, because the players are going to find it. And the idea that I had to start these was because I was playing in a Lancer game, or still am, and all the other players were new to the system, and our first couple combats, you know, they'd take their turn and they'd be like, okay, so what do we do? And combat took a long time. That was totally fine. Everyone's learning the system. I was the only person in that game in that first combat besides the DM who had really had any experience with the system. So after that, I reached out and I was like, hey, I mean, do you want me to create you a little cheat sheet for your character? And I put together basically like 2 pages about like, hey, these are what your systems are. This is what they can do. You know, these are who your friends on the battlefield is. So like this other character, Molly, she's got combined arms, which means that she gets soft cover when she's standing adjacent to one of the NPCs. And you don't have that ability, and you don't have another way to get cover, but you like to be in melee. So if you stand next to her, then everybody wins and you get soft cover. You know, stuff like that, where it's like, these are the people you should try to be close to, and these are, you know, ways to spend your action economy. And then my GM was like, man, you should make one of these for all the NPC classes. And I was like, ooh, well, now there's an idea. And thus the idea was born. And it takes me a while because they're, as you can see, like 17 pages. But I really love it. It's a lot of fun, and it helps me as a GM think about and plan the kind of things that I'm going to be doing to my players.
Right, yeah.
And just like just to kind of you know, I guess I'm on board with the hype train for this. It reads super well. I mean, you know, I can say like long form documents of stuff, just like, you know, informing people. Like sometimes it could be like a hard read, but no way, man. Like I can really hear the narrative voice behind it, and it's actually a fun read to you know, dive in and kind of dig in through all the stuff you're putting out. And also, like, I think it's awesome that you put in just like encounters. I think that's one of the big things, because it's like, I don't like, for me it's like, how do I come up with a cool encounter that's like gonna, you know, be interesting to my players, and you know, kind of fitting it all together. But like, if anything, like I could just steal some of what you put together and just kind of like tweak wherever I need to be. But, you know, because you've already thought about what the strategy is, I don't have to, you know, break my brain over it to figure out like what exactly I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that really was my goal with them. I tried to, it stretches out the process, but it's something that I really love, is creating a little narrative for the encounters that I'm putting forward. Because my goal with each one of these guides is to teach a GM, like, how can you make this specific mech class like the star of the show? How do you make it so at the end of that encounter, the PCs are like, oh man, screw that thing. Like, if I ever see a Hornet again, it is priority number one. I don't care what else is on the field. I'm going to shoot that thing out of the sky. So I wanted to create like a compelling narrative of what would a villain look like, you know, in a mech like that. What would a villain or just any kind of antagonist to the players look like if they were centered around that kind of thing. It's hard to imagine like with the Hornet specifically. I was like, well, this thing it does 1 damage with its pistol. Like, it is a size half. It has 8 HP. How could the big bad of an arc be inside a Hornet when you can just one-shot it with a smart weapon? And so I wanted to create kind of a narrative structure for it that makes it stand out and be unique and be an actual threat for the players.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I for sure did not, like, I saw the Hornet as a supporting character for sure in like my NPC composition. But you're right, like making it the star of the show. And I think it's brilliant, and as well as like, you know, implementing all of the team around, I guess, that linchpin, right, or like the Hornet really kind of highlights like the utility of like, you know, maybe sometimes you never really thought of, like, I don't know, how would a Rainmaker really interact with, like, you know, whatever, right? So no, it's cool. And also like really spot on with the Goliath and Hornet combo, because, you know, one of the most unsatisfying things about using a Goliath is when you like try and do like I forget what it's called, but it's like, you know, like the punch that just blasts people like 5 spaces away, and then they just make their save, and you're like, damn it, this is all I wanted to do. Like, but yeah, man, Hornet solves that. You know, get that many ways to impair, right? So yeah, no, cool, totally awesome, for sure.
Absolutely. Goodness, I can't remember if there was anything else as a part of that question that I haven't answered yet.
Oh no, I was just wondering, like, sort of, I mean, like, how you expected GMs to use this, and you really definitely covered that. Because for me, like, coming in with very little experience as to Lancer NPCs, say for like occasional glances, because I was really more focused on understanding how my characters are working. It's certainly, like, this is definitely something that I wish existed for other games. It certainly would have made onboarding myself into GMing a lot easier, because, again, like, you're throwing things at the party and you can spend time thinking about, like, okay, what's appropriate for this area, what's an appropriate level for the party, what's an interesting selection of characters. But then, like, in whatever game you're in, then you throw them at your party, and then suddenly you realize, oh, they have this one weakness that's very easy to take advantage of, or, oh, this isn't a very good combination between these 2 characters. There's no way for them to act in sync. And what you have here, I think, is just like, I mean, I don't know, I wish I had it for other stuff, because it's just, like, it gives me these ideas. It's like, oh, well, I know maybe I can use this thing with this. They might combo well together if I'm in this particular situation. And then from there, I can just work out, like, well, how do I set up that situation, and how would it be appropriate as a challenge for the party?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, like, the kind of thinking that I want to impart by making these, is like make kind of self-sufficient GMs, you know, so you can read one of these and understand, like okay, I've run a few games at this point, like me myself, and like I have a decent understanding of difficulty. Like, at any point, you know, the players can just be rolling 1s all day, and you can be rolling nothing but 15s, 16s, and suddenly an encounter that's very balanced is more difficult, just because of luck. But understanding the general difficulty is something that I've kind of grasped over, like, multiple adventures and missions that I've run. And I think understanding just kind of the basic, like, encounter structure, what is difficult, what is challenging, what is easy, from there, really a GM can take it and make something on their own, run completely with that.
you do have to compensate for luck a lot, especially in the D20 based games, because you have a very wide range of potential results from many die rolls.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do like that Lancer in some way balances that out, and that like nearly every single NPC, you know, except for certain templates, and there are a few NPCs that are exceptions, but they can't critically hit. You know, for an NPC in Lancer, it's are you hit or are you not, and that it means that players get to feel good when they roll a 20 or higher, because you know you get to roll twice and take the higher one. But it's not absolute devastation. It's not like, you know, trying to play D&D at level 1. You know, you send some mook with a battle axe at the players, like 3rd edition or whatever, like even just like a basic hand axe or something that has like ×3 crit on it, and it's like, oops, I rolled a 20 and I just did 15 damage to your level 1 character. You're chunky salsa now, you know, and that's not a problem with Lancer. You've got, each player has functionally 4 health bars. And the thing that I really like, that I will add, is that in Lancer, the players can overcome virtually anything within a single encounter. I was playing with my GM when we were just testing the system out. I just built 4 little mechs, and he went ahead and built a really hard encounter, and I managed to beat it and used like, I don't know, I took like anywhere from 2 to 3 structure on like each of the characters. I had to stabilize. I used most of my repair kits, and it was a nigh impossible encounter, and like we still won. You know, you can still do that in Lancer. You can't throw another encounter at the players after you do something like that because they're out of resources, but there is a degree to which Lancer is very player facing, and that the players are very strong in Lancer. The synergies that they have will virtually always be stronger than the synergies you can create as a GM. All the mechs work together very well, even just from the archetypal, you know, if the players have a defender, a striker, an artillery, and a support, or a controller, you know, they're going to be able to do just a ton of devastation, even if they're not, I don't know, you'll see people be like, oh, hey, if you have like the goblin and the, what's it called, the Gordon or something,
yeah,
together, that like these two have like so much synergy, they can do all these stuff together, and it's like, really the truth is like just about any player mechs can work together and just demolish anything you have as a GM. So
for sure,
finding that kind of synergy for yourself, it makes it more of a tactical puzzle for the players to approach. They have to figure out what pieces they're going to try and take first, and how they're going to handle the situation you have for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Like I agree with you wholeheartedly that like you can probably put together any combination of mechs and they'll solve the problem. I mean, even if you're like, I don't know, a bunch of SSC mechs going up against like 6 goblins, or not goblins, witches, you'll make it out, I think. I mean, some of your mechs might explode. You know, you might have a really bad time and not be able to do your cool SSC bullshit, but like you could definitely overcome it. But yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of why I like Lancer a lot. I feel as a DM, I'm always leaning towards the, you know, make them feel the pain when I want, right? So it's like my encounters tend to be more deadly. You know, they tend to hit a little harder, and I don't really think about like, oh, like, you know, it's fine. The players will make it through, right? And Lancer allows me to do that, you know, so it's good. That's why I love playing this game. Also, you know, cool giant robots and stuff. It's very, very awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it is a very well-designed game. You did mention something about a solar Lancer game that I did want to touch on, since we're just talking about the game in general. I was sort of like, Yeah, I was just wondering like what the experience was, just having like one player, one GM, I guess, for a Lancer game was like.
Yeah, absolutely. It got a little hectic. So what we ended up doing was we kind of did it like Fire Emblem style, basically, where she's got her one mech she was building towards the Blackbeard. She wanted to be up close and personal, and we built three other mechs that would assist her, essentially, who took kind of the other archetypal roles. She had an artillery ally, a support, and a controller. And she built them up, but was just kind of like, since I knew all the rules and how all these characters worked, I was like, okay, so you'll have a character or two assisting you for each one of these like mission deployments that you go on, and you just tell me like what the goal is. Like, what is your goal? What do you want this character to be doing on this turn? And I'll point to something, and then you can roll some dice, And it's because I wasn't sure how well Lancer would play for just one person. I don't know. Looking at how the mechs would line up against a single character, and I'm not sure about this, but it looked like it would kind of either be like, a lot more luck dependent than having a group.
Yeah.
Take it on. So, in the first adventure, she brought along one person. In the second, she brought along two people. And then in the third one, she brought along all three of them. So a full 4-person party. And it got to be a little bit too much to keep track of. So as we're getting deeper into the adventure, she's only taking, like 2 of them or 1 of them per mission. And then after she kind of like decides on that and like learns about what's going on and what she'd like to do, I go and I create what the mission's going to look like, balanced around how many people are going to be with her. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Wow. Okay, cool. I mean, I do like the Fire Emblem style of like, bringing along your NPC buddies, right? Because being the team leader on, you can choose who goes on, what map or whatever, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in our Path of Inion game that I was running, like we have a whole it's in Pathfinder 2e, so they have like a whole adventuring town that's full of a bunch of NPCs that they have curated, and a bunch of relationships. So they can, at any point, they can just bring them along on an adventure, right? So yeah, that sounds awesome. I kind of want to do that now. I kind of want to grab person who's be like, hey, we're doing this, and here's a bunch of duders. Choose your studer you want to take on this mission, and let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a very good way to for me to I learned a lot about Lancer in that, just because it meant that I got to, the less people you have, the faster you can kind of get through these encounters, and it let me try out just about all of the NPCs that I tried to use different ones for each fight, just to try and figure out, what the kind of role of each one of the NPCs was, because you can learn a lot by reading the description and the systems that they have available, but it doesn't mean too much until you get into practice, where it's like, oh, okay, this character has a lot of really powerful stuff. What does having sensor range 5 mean? Like, how does that affect you? And it's hard to tell until you play on a map and you're like, oh, okay, 5 spaces is not far, at all. It is very difficult to hack people if you have only sensor range 5 on this mech. And suddenly it puts into perspective what those, really powerful tech attacks, oh, okay, that's balanced by the fact that you can't hit people very far away. That kind of thing. That just the general experience of just playing a ton, I made some fights that were way too easy and some fights that were way too hard, and from there is kind of figuring out what that balance is, and how to present that.
Yeah.
For sure. Honestly, the first couple encounters that I put together, I was like, looking back at them now, I'm like, what the heck was I doing? Like, but you just never know until you start actually, like, you know, get in the nitty gritty of stuff and like realizing what the numbers actually mean, and like figuring out placement and like, you know, actual like effective range of stuff, right? Because I mean, like, you're right, like if something has like a sensor range of 5 but they have a speed of 6, then all of a sudden your effective hacking range in one turn, if nothing's slowing you down, is like 11.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, how big do I make the map? Is it 20 by 20? That means I can make half the map and go hack somebody, right? For sure. Then it's like, you know, going in through all that kind of stuff, with like, you know, when do reinforcements show up? Like, what kind of reinforcements? Like, what are they planning on doing? Like, you know, yeah, totally. That's why I love Lancers. It just keeps getting, as weird as it sounds, it looks like it's a really fun and simple game to play and get into, but it's also really fun to get lost in the weeds, right? Like, the game's pretty good for just, you could just pick and choose whatever that looks good and it'll be fun. But if you really want to like crank up, like, you know, the difficulty, or like, you know, finding those cool synergies, it's totally there for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess something else that I just kind of thought of, another reason that I really wanted to make these guides was that, I mean, you're on the Reddit, the Discord, you see people like, oh, I love this mech can do so many cool things, this is my build for this mech, this is my build for all this stuff. And as a GM, you know, you don't really get to do that in most games. Like, there are some editions of D&D where you can make a character kind of from start to finish, and be like, oh, this is your antagonist, he's the same level as you, you know, he has a player class or whatever. But a lot of these games, especially like Lancer, that doesn't exist. You can't, PvP isn't a thing you really use Lancer for. It's not built for it. And as a GM, you can't really do that. You've just got these templates and all these little toys. And, you know, I wanted GMs to be able to say, oh, I really love all the toys in my toy box here. Like, how to love the mechs and the classes that you have access to and enjoy the game the same way that the players are able to enjoy the game with their toy box. Seems like it's much bigger with much richer things inside it. And as a GM in Lancer, you actually have a lot of those things, a lot of similar things, a lot of things the players don't even have access to that you can use to, you know, fall in love with your encounters and your antagonists. And I think that lends itself to better GMing if you really care about the encounters you're putting forward and the characters that you're creating, even if they're just total bastards, you know, scum and villainy. This is an awful fascist who's taking on this planet, you know. But if you can create that persona and build it around, like, create those turn that personality and represent that as like mechanics as a metaphor, the mechanics of your game, and letting the game speak for itself by creating something that represents what you are pitting the characters against. You can do that, and I love doing that. That's one of my favorite things about GMing Lancer and GMing in general.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Like I don't know. I'm really bad at making bad guys, I guess. It's not like they're sympathetic. I just often view the PCs as villains.
Because they're just like
so much stronger than everybody that they're just like wiping the floor with, that I'm always like, I'm pretty sure these guys would be like, oh my god, those are the bad guys, like immediately, right? Like and during our Lancer stream, I think for our, was it the 4th mission, when they're on like an ocean planet, and the bad guys are trying to steal the ocean because, you know, I don't know, free water, like, but you know, the players literally came out of nowhere. They had no information on them, and they just like basically like decimated them. And they're like, who are you people, right? Like, who are you villains showing up to ruin our day and shoot at our friends, like
to ruin their villainy? We were the bad guys.
Yeah, you guys are the bad guys, right? All the time. And you know, to me, I love that aspect, because it's like, you know, as the players get stronger and level up, they get more infamous, and then dudes might be like, oh god, it's that guy, we should just run. Right? Like, don't even bother fighting them, just get out while you can, kind of deal. But yeah, it's you're right. I know that I haven't really scratched the surface so much for my NPCs. I couldn't really tell. I think the only NPC I think that I'm truly like, I think I could use this in every fight is like the ace. I think you could use the ace in like every single fight because it's really easy to use. And yeah, you just fly forward, shoot pew pew, shoot some missiles, and then fly backwards, like and like you just rinse repeat, right? But it's like, for me, it's always about like speed and positioning, and I think that like flows. That's just me stemming from like as a player. It's always like I'm always like let's go as fast as possible. Let's hit hard and like pull back, kind of deal.
Oh yeah, I'd say especially with Lancer, when sit rep setups, the things that you have available to you, the tools you have as a GM to be like, okay, well, you have to get to this point and hold this capture point within 8 rounds. Like on the end of round 8, if there aren't more of you inside this like 5x6 box than there are enemies, like you lose and that's it. And it's like, it doesn't matter how many mechs that you destroy. It doesn't matter if there are more of you at the end than of them. If you're not in that capture point, it doesn't matter, because that's the thing that matters, because they have hostages, because a bomb is going to go off, because any number of other reasons. And the speed and versatility and survivability of mechs, just like you mentioned, the ace, like it's got that barrel roll, it can get out of trouble, it can move virtually anywhere it wants while flying, it can just drop bombs on people, it can completely ignore melee mechs because it has flight, stuff like that. A lot of mechs do really speak for themselves, and some of them really don't. Like I think especially one of the reasons I was so excited about doing the Hornet when I got to the controllers was that I feel like, and this isn't a slight by any means, but a lot of GMs might not know how to use or consider using the Hornet because it's got 8 hit points, Like the example I gave is that if one of the PCs has a Raleigh, it can walk up to you, barrage, and miss with every single attack and still destroy you because of reliable damage. Like, you'll be nothing after a single, turn, even if the player doesn't hit a single time.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I just want to add for the Hornet. I think our first encounter on the stream was I made Hornet grunts, right? Because I was like, Hornets are so little HP anyway, they might as well be grunts. So like I just had, I don't know, 10 Hornets just flying around the map. But that's the first encounter, the first fight these people ever had, which was hilarious because it started the infamy of Magenta Orangutan and his assault rifle, which was reliable, and he was the only person being able to take care of these things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was curious. Well, actually, one thing I'm kind of wondering, since Ramon mentioned his favorite NPC type, I was wondering, Celeste, if you had one as well. But I did also want to hear, more importantly, you mentioned something about similarities between Lancer and D&D 4th edition, which I was kind of curious about. But I am also wondering if you had a favorite NPC type in Lancer.
Just
because I haven't considered that myself, but I don't know. Do you happen to have one?
God, every time that I build, I have this I don't know, favorite thing is directly in front of me syndrome, where each mech NPC class that I've built, every time I'm like, oh, okay, this is my new favorite. I love this thing. And then I'll go back and I'll be rereading my Bombard guide and I'll be like, oh man, you know what? Actually, I love this thing more than anything else. I don't know. I really can't say. I think that for each of the classes, you might be able to break out which one is kind of the most generally good, what has the most synergy with the most people, and then something like that. You know, I might say I really like, and I can't wait to get to this, but it's just such a straightforward mech that it's not a guide that I'm in a hustle to make. But I really love the assault. It's such a.
I knew you were gonna say that.
It's always in my mind too. It's like, oh, it's such a good mech.
It is, and it's such a simple mech. Like it's very clear to the GM when they're looking at it. It's like, okay, this thing once per turn it can get resistance if it gets shot, so that it has some extra longevity. It has a 1 armor. It's not much, but it means that it doesn't really care that much about reliable weapons. But players with armor-piercing ammo still get to feel special when they're attacking it. It's got a decent range on its weapon, and it has so much versatility. Like, every single one of its abilities, every time I mention it in one of these synergy guides, it's like, well, you can use pretty much anything that this thing has, because everything is fun.
And like, I think that like, even though it's set in the striker class, it still has, like you said, it's a little tough. It has some abilities to like affect, you know, like ranges, and like, you know, it can put out a decent amount of like artillery damage, right? Like its gun isn't that long, but you could have like the option for like the high caliber rounds to really kind of make those really chunky boys PCs to feel a little bit like, oh wait, this dude has armor piercing now. Like, oh man, like it's a, you know, I love it so much. And yeah, I have to also struggle with myself to not just kind of like put one assault in a thing, because it just really feels like a really strong all-arounder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can benefit virtually any situation. It's just a matter of using it in a way that synergizes with the rest of the group. You know, like if you have like, so I'm currently working on my Aegis or Aegis, I don't know exactly how they pronounce it, guide. And the assault is one of the ones that I mentioned, and the Aegis has this defense net, which creates the burst 3 area that makes it very difficult to shoot anybody inside it. So it really keeps your NPCs safe. And the assault works really well with it, but you don't want to just have a solo assault somewhere else on the map. You want to make sure that it's positioned inside that area. And then, like, for example, if you want to use the micro missile barrage, you got to make sure that you step forward to take that shot at players, because, you know, you're going to be adjacent to all your buddies, which means you don't want to fire it through them, you know, that kind of thing. It can fit into virtually any team composition. It's not a very strong melee weapon, but it has one if players rush it. It has a blast weapon, a blast radius weapon, just everything about it. It's just a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, totally. And like, I think that like it's slapping on templates, like any of the templates would work great on this thing, like for sure. Like because you just have the options for all of it, right? It's
yeah.
Actually, yeah, I would want to touch base. Like, what do you feel? How do you feel about the templates that Lancer provides? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Goodness, do we want to talk about the templates first, or jump into the question about 4th edition?
We can definitely talk about the templates first, just because it's more of a Lancer thing that I think more people would be interested in. I was just kind of curious about your comparisons there, but we can definitely talk about the templates first.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the templates. Like, it's one of my favorite things about being able to GM Lancer, because it's something that, as a GM, you look at the templates and you're like, oh, okay, so the first thing you kind of picture, because these are the ones that are name dropped in the section, it's like, oh, okay, an elite counts for what? Like, you can use like an elite for every 1 to 2 players, basically, that are in the area. And then it's like, okay, the Ultra is the boss fight. The Ultra is that you use 1 for every like 3 to 4 players or so. And then you've got, you know, just normal, where you would use 1 to 2 or so per them. And then the Grunts, you use like 4 per player, that kind of thing. I love how the templates work, because for one, there's just so much more that you can do with those templates. Like, one of my favorites is, I really love the Commander template. because it gives you it basically turns any character on the field. Like, I like how the commander doesn't get extra turns per round, because being a commander doesn't necessarily make you a better fighter, but it does make you very good at the tactics. You have options where at the start of your turn as a protocol, you can make one of the NPCs on the mech boost, one of the NPCs on the map boost. And it's just like, yeah, so like once per turn, you can go, all right, I want this character to move its speed somewhere. And that gives you kind of like a lot of control over like what's going on somewhere. You can be like, oh, okay, you knocked this character out of a capture point. Well, it's my commander's turn. The commander's going to step onto a control point to get a point for the NPCs at the end of the round, and is going to tell this other mech to boost onto the control point you just knocked it off of to contest it. So you don't get a point, you know, and it lets you kind of like multitask like that. I think that the combat in Lancer it's kind of like a puzzle at the end of the day, because all the pieces work kind of differently. It's not so simple as in chess where if you touch it, it dies, but there still is roles that each one of these things kind of fills, and having control over certain areas may be more important than having more mechs than the players have at any certain point. And the commander lets you, really do stuff about that. But I'm just a huge fan of the less traditional ones. Like, I wanted to make, like with the Hornet, like I made it like the final boss was a ship class Hornet. It was also an Ultra.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like this size 4 thing that can fly at supersonic speeds around the map, and just control just enormous areas, because suddenly it's a size 4 with a threat 3 weapon. So functionally, you're covering a 10 by 10 area with a threat zone, and Ultras get as many opportunity or Overwatch attacks around as they want. So like suddenly the players have a much larger difficulty like moving around in an area. And one of the things I'm talking about now with the Aegis is that the defense net means that it immobilizes itself but protects everybody around it. Well, if you have another character who's a ship or a vehicle with the transport option, then it's immobilized, but you can just carry it to a control point, and suddenly the players are watching in horror as as a mobile defense area is slowly approaching them.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, and the templates let you do things in fight that are really unexpected to the players. I love it so much. Like, I think that the templates are handled so well. Like, I know in D&D has had templates, and 4th edition was an edition that had them, but it generally be things of like, okay, this increases the CR of this creature because you're giving it the half-dragon template or the like vampire warrior template or whatever, where it's like, okay, suddenly it can make attacks with this weapon at a decent bonus, do this much damage, but adding templates adds an entirely new layer to a character in Lancer because it gives them so many more optional features that they can draw from.
Yeah, for sure. Like I again, it's I also like the commander template because it adds like that extra little bit of support. Like you can turn like a purely striker character like a sword. I was gonna say sword master because you mentioned Fire Emblem. What's that thing called?
The Scourer? Right. Oh, the Ronin. Yeah.
The Ronin, yeah, the sword master. Yeah, so the Ronin, you can turn a Ronin into more of like a captain type character with a whole bunch of forward moving pieces, right? So then you're able to like bounce characters in and out of combat, protect them with that like the big threat range of that sword and use like its abilities, but also be like aiding your allies too, right? And yeah, no, it's totally awesome. And I wish more games just had templates for stuff, right? We're just like, hey, do you want, like, I wish Goblins are just like, hey, do you just want like do you want a goblin leader? Here's take the leader template, slap it onto any goblin, and then all of a sudden this dude's like in charge, right?
Yeah,
That's what I want.
and it lets you, because after a couple encounters, players are going to see mechs and be like, oh, okay, this is what that thing does. That's a hive. It burns me when it shoots me. It can immobilize me or force me to move, and it throws out these annoying drone swarms that also burn me, you know. And you've got optional features which augment those abilities, like, oh, okay, suddenly the swarms can move this time. I really hate that. The swarms can move me, or any number of other things that something like that can do. But then you add like the pirate template onto one of those, and suddenly a hive walks up to you and takes a full action to throw a bunch of core worm rockets on you that start drilling into your mech. And you as the player, like, what on earth? Like, where did this come from? And it,
oh god, save me.
Exactly, and it adds new depth to the encounters, and it's a fun way to surprise players and encourage them to one, work together, because you can start throwing things at them that are very difficult to deal with alone, but also in the sense that, like, there's an action that a lot of players forget, which is the scan action, which means that you point at an NPC and you go, okay, GM, I want you to tell me the stat block on that thing and everything it can do. And you as the GM go, okay, all right, you spent that quick action. Here is everything that this mech can do. And a lot of players don't do that, especially after a couple encounters, because they're like, oh, okay, I've learned how this works, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And when you have templates, suddenly it's like, because you tell the character, okay, this is a Scourer, this is a Ronin, this is a Commander Goliath. And they're like, oh, well, I don't know what that is. And it encourages them to scan it. And for, like, an Ultra, obviously, they should scan the Ultra, because an Ultra gets, like, 3 bonus systems and a bunch of random crap that the players should probably know about before they get absolutely chunked by them. But
you think that, but in practice, I feel like nobody ever scans until it's like they say like, oh, we should probably scan it. And by that time, it's like too late.
Until we've been on the receiving end of the new things it can do, and then we're like, oh yeah, maybe we should figure out what those are.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it informs the players in a certain way. Like, if a player had never seen a Hornet before, and they shoot at it a couple times, and they're like, what do you mean I missed? I rolled a 14. And then it's like, well, maybe you should scan the robot. And they scan it, and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. We need to use smart weapons against this thing. It has a 6E defense. Like, or, well, we're screwed. We don't have something to deal with that. I guess we better go deal with something else and stop shooting it. And I love encouraging players to scan things by throwing, you know, unexpected things at them, because it lets them think more tactically about the situation and find ways to solve the puzzle that's before them. Yeah, I just love templates. I love how each mech has different templates that it's a fan of, that work uniquely with them. But really, my tip would be, just in any given encounter, make sure at least 1 or 2 things out there have a template, because it adds variety, you know? Even if it's not something that's going to make the encounter more difficult, like making an elite character somewhere, you don't necessarily need to do that, but you can add some kind of unique flavor to a fight, and then be guided by that. It's like, well, why the hell is there a pirate here? You know? And you as a GM can add something to an encounter by being like, oh yeah, pirates are helping these guys. Maybe you should spend some downtime about it.
Hey, yeah, this guy's an eye patch. That's why he's a pirate now. You know, well, hey, folks, that's your weekly secret tip of the week.
Oh yes, the secret second tip.
The secret second tip of the week. That's what it is. I only recently got good at saying the first bit of this. Yeah, cool. Well, shoot.
I'm very tempted to add a new theme song on for the secret second tip. But so yeah, I guess we can just finish off with if you want to comment on if there's any like last comments you want to make, or if you did want to talk about that comparison between Lancer and 4th edition. If you wanted to finish off with that.
Yeah, sure. I really like the oh my god, I've been craving 4th edition so much recently. I don't really know why. It's just it was a really fun system, I thought, and a lot of people didn't really like it. And there are good reasons for why people didn't like it. But one of the things that 4th edition did was that both for player characters and for the enemies, the NPCs, there were the same kind of archetype structure. They had strikers, they had defenders, or they may have called them tanks, I can't remember. They had controllers, I think they were called controllers, and leaders, who were kind of like the supports in 4th edition. And that was how they organized both the player classes and the NPC classes that you'd be up against. And I really, I think playing Lancer is what has made me miss 4th edition D&D. It's just, it's a dense system to start playing out of the blue. There are just so many rule books that you need, and I don't know, I think Lancer did such a great job of boiling it down to the essentials that you needed to know to handle the game and to have a fun time playing it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that we played 4th edition 2 when it came out, but that didn't last for very long. That's when we jumped to Pathfinder, actually, and we used that system because we were 3.5 players before. With my very first RPG group. Yeah, no, I think looking back at it, I think it was mostly just like you know, just like how the drastic of the change was. But now I really appreciate 4th edition existing, because even within like say the archetype of the goblin, right, just like a straight box standard goblins, excluding like hobgoblins and bugbears and stuff like that, 4th edition just gave you like a cool combination of like, hey, just take all these goblins and they're all slightly different from each other and they all kind of work together, right? I think, you know, more stuff needs that too, where it's like if you just have like a, you know, like every goblin isn't the same goblin, or like one dude's obviously going to be different from the other one, right? And that's what I liked about it, that like in the section of like, this is what a goblin do, there's so much variety. I know that it did that in Pathfinder 2e a little bit, so like the goblins in there, or like any of like those kind of groupings of things, of monsters, they do have like an obvious like, this guy is the grunt, like regular base goblin thing, right, the monster, and then it's like the next guy, he's kind of more elite, so this is the elite of it, and this guy's obviously the boss. Like for like orcs, it's like, this is the orc boss. Like his name is just Orc Boss, so you know that guy is the leader.
And,
Yeah.
He has abilities that are like affects other orcs, and it's like makes them better. So it's like, you know, you like as a GM running for the first time, and I'm like looking through the book and I'm like, oh, okay, this dude looks like he could just be the leader. And then, you know, your players are fighting this dude, and it's like he's a little tougher than everybody else, he's a little harder, but also on top of that, he makes everyone better. So no, it gives that little bit of like, okay, I need to prioritize either, you know, stopping this dude from helping out his friends or separating him or something, because like, you know, they're gonna get overwhelmed and smashed because this dude is just like you know, making everyone better. And right, you know, you really just, you know, it's built in, you know, sweet succulent synergy right on board, right? So yeah.
I do kind of like how Lancer does that a bit better, though, at least from what I'm seeing, because I feel like it's easier to get whatever kind of NPC you want to fight a higher level party. With Pathfinder, I mean, like, you have different kinds of goblins, but they're still very low level as far as enemies go. You gotta put some extra legwork in if you want to throw a bunch. If for whatever reason you want to throw a bunch of goblins at a higher level party, you gotta put some more effort into that. I think Lancer makes that a bit easier, at least from what I've seen, just because it has 3 different levels for everything.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's one of the most aggravating things for me. I've been running like 5th edition D&D like probably for a total of like 5 years of my life now, and like the one thing that's always frustrating to me is like the CR, the challenge rating, and finding things to build a good encounter where it's like, oh, okay, well, I need something that's like about this CR to like challenge the players as like a boss kind of creature. And it's like, okay, well, let's take a look at that. Okay, so we've got like a T-Rex. Well, no reason for them to be fighting that.
Yeah.
The super secret T-Rex hidden in the mausoleum, like.
Exactly, and like Lancer, you're exactly right. The tiers for each of the NPC classes. I think some people might look at it and be like, "What? You've only got 30 enemy types in your game? Like that doesn't seem like a lot." And yeah, but there's something to be said for players being able to fight against and learn about how certain enemies work. Because like as a GM, you're probably not going to, it's nice to have a monster manual with like, 200 creatures in it. But in any given campaign, you're probably only going to use about 30 anyway. Like, maybe.
Yeah.
And
you're totally right. You're totally right, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like at some levels, you just gotta get like real specific. Like I've had situations where it's like I want this specific kind of creature, but like I have to buff it up because my players are just way out of level for this, or lower it down because they're just way out of level. I don't know. It's just that's, and again, one of the things that about Lancer is great is that modularity of it, that customization of it, on both sides of the screen, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're coming up towards the end of the show. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about the NPC guides? We'll have links for them, like in the description below. We'll have a link to the Google Drive where they are located. But is there anything else you wanted to say, or anywhere else that people can, find what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a Twitter. We can link that as well, and I've been using that for putting these out. My pinned tweet is the guide. But I mean, really, it's just that I love this. Like, I've only been listening for I've only had like a chance to listen for the past like week and a half since this channel got pointed out to me. But I really like what you're doing, because I love. You can find such unexpected things when people who never thought that they would GM find the courage or desire to do so, and find that it's not as scary as they might think. And it's a great thing. You can get really unique things, and like unique games will come out of somebody who was experiencing trepidation about that, who suddenly like gives in to the urge and drops that kind of like shame that they might have, or concern about being like, oh, well, I don't think I could GM a game, like managing players and stuff like that. And it's a lot easier and more fun, and I wanted to give people the chance to do that, and that's what y'all are doing too, and I really love that.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, yeah, we just love that situation when someone just like starts running a game and then you get to see all of their unique ideas and everything. And yeah, hopefully more people are able to start running Lancer because they start reading your guides and they get a better sense of how to, set up an encounter.
I hope so.
I would love to play more Lancer games.
Good dream.
And I would love to play a mask game. Maybe one day we'll play together. I don't know.
Or Calvin.
But I think that's gonna be about it for now. Again, like, thanks a ton for everybody who was listening. We did recently cross 200 subscribers, so I want to thank people again for that. Ramon, it was your birthday recently, and I forgot to mention at the top of the show. So happy birthday to you. Everyone, drop a happy.
Up.
Yeah, happy birthday, Ramon.
Thank you.
Everyone, drop a happy birthday in the comment section below. as well as a like, maybe. We really appreciate those, and they help with the algorithm somehow. At least that's what I've been told. And also hit that subscribe button and ring that bell notification so you get notified when a new episode goes up, or when we put anything else up, like a live stream of Lancer, which we have several of, and will also be linked below. We got a whole lot of episodes of that are really fun. Also wanted to give a shout out to NHP Shaka, who not only introduced us to Celeste, but also put out the field guide to Fontanez. And also, you can check out the itch.io link below, which will also have some files you can use for your CompCon if you want to load those builds into your CompCon to use. And also, another shout out to the Untold Stories project, where I'm there every week playing Mutants and Masterminds on Mondays. So you can go check us out live there on Twitch. We took the last week off, but we're back this week, so you can go check out that episode. We also did an episode with Steve Kenson, the designer of Mutants and Masterminds, so that was a whole lot of fun, so be sure to check that out. And I think that is about it for this episode.
Oh!
There's a ton of links below, so check them all out.
Oh, one other thing, actually, that I want to add. If you really like Lancer, you should check out Icon, which has just been put out by the same guy who made Lancer. It's his take on a fantasy game, and everyone should look at it because it's awesome.
Oh my god, it's brilliant. It's really brilliant.
Well, there'll be a link to it below, so you can go check it out.
All right, perfect. Thanks, guys, for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. Just really enjoyed this. Hopefully we get to do more stuff in the future. But I think with that, we'll bring the episode to a close. Are there any other closing comments from either of you right now?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Well, for everybody out there, all the players and GMs and potential players and potential GMs, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.